Hi, this is Zeus again, Dr. Zeus back for week 12 now. I'm trying to get a little bit ahead on these things to help everybody um, be able to get ahead in their own. I know toward the end of the semester, a lot of work comes down, and what I'm doing is I'm taking a lot of time because this is also supported by research to free up time, especially for group work, and actually take off the acceleration toward the end by having you really work consistently through the semester and allowing you to kind of develop these capacities. Now it's a time for all this to come to fruition. As I also say here, it's also time for us to go from the analytical, critical mindedness, developing content capability, and toward creativity and interconnection and compassion. Those are my four principles. And we really, really hit the first two hard: critical mindedness and capacity or capability. Now, there'll still be a little bit of emphasis on that, but not much. The centrality of creativity and compassion. In this case, compassion being be able to really work with other people, be able to share yourself openly with other people, and do that in the context of a really competent group presentation on one of the emotional classes. So let's say, so basically, I have a work template for week 12, 13, and 14 for the most part. Week 14 is, might be a little bit different. I'm going to actually probably take it off week 14. Well, let's just say group 13 right now. For week 12 and 13. Because I'm going to go ahead and take that off too. Because really 16 is just when you turn it in. It's finals week. There really isn't anything to be done then. It's just a due date. So we'll be doing 12 and 13 this time, 14 and 15 the next time, and we're only going to do one video for each pair of weeks. So there'll be just this one video for this week and one video for the next. So I hope that it's very helpful. Like I said, I'm being compassionate myself. I realize that a lot of times a lot of the work gets stacked up. In this case, we are taking a little bit of the individual work off, allowing you to spend some more time breathing, interacting, doing some stuff that's a little bit more fun, a little bit more personally relevant, and not so much heavy on the academic and so forth. So you've done a great job, so why not let the work you've done, as I said, work for you now? Again, this is a study guide. Don't submit work directly to me if you can help it. Go to just maybe as a backup if you're worried about me getting it and you want some evidence that I've received it, because sometimes Blackboard Learn can be a little bit wonky. But here are the guiding questions for week 12, and then by extension, week 13. Week 13 is just a work week. If you look at week 13, I already made it available. Week 12 is now available. I gave you a description in the introduction of your final paper. So if you want to get going on that, you can print that out or copy it from the introduction into a Word document and do some initial brainstorming. Like I said before, one of the best things to do is to do some initial seeding, 5 or 10 minutes of work just to get your subconscious brain going. That's when insights really start to happen instead of when you're under the gun. So the questions we're going to be doing this week: how are you going to approach the group presentation? Okay, where we address steps number 2, which have to do with describing research. Step number 4, connecting to real life. Step number 5, concluding and offering strategies. There are 5 steps, remember. We did 2 of them yesterday, or last week, sorry. One having to do basically with trying to find an issue, and another one doing an emotional inventory about your group's background perspectives with this particular issue. So this week, it's actually fairly simple, or I should say these 2 weeks, there's just this introductory video, acing group presentations plus readings. And I'm just going to append the very, very short readings to this. And then reading engaging academic readings in the week 12 folder, Reeve chapter 10, the self and its strivings, concentrating on page 274 for the discussion board question. Again, if you're pressed for time, go right to that page, read that page, and I will do a discussion of it in this video, and skim through the rest. I won't be insulted. You've got to make priority out of your time. If you're a grad student, you're passionate about these things, you think it's interesting, spend the extra time. The objectives for these 2 weeks, basically: learn how to ace group presentations by fully participating, identifying and offering diverse talent, delegating roles, discussing and meeting the assignment steps, okay? So you notice I'm trying to be very specific, and maybe even a little bit difficult here, going back to motivation research, very specific about, without being, I don't know, without over determining how you do these things, but just giving you a format to allow you to play a lot within that format. And number 2 objective, develops research-informed perspectives and ability to transform negative self-views. That has to do with the readings this week, and I will talk about at the end, toward the end of this video. And then again, collectively refine the group presentation and finish out preliminary research and steps. You should have gone through all the steps by now, okay? Allotted roles, gathered the talents of the people in the group, given each person a chance to really contribute something substantively. That was basically one of the 3 steps I wanted to make sure. 2, that everybody participates, not just their talent, but their time and their effort. And then finally, meeting the steps themselves, okay? So you're finishing out preliminary research and the steps in the group presentation. Steps number 2, describe the research. Number 4, connect to real life. And number 5, conclude and offer strategies. Again, what we're concentrating is moving from the so-called negative antisocial emotions toward the pro-social positive emotions. Again, let me stress, I'm not trying to make a bully and a bad guy out of the negative emotions. I have a lot of empathy for that, and I want us to learn into that. Those emotions are the ones that introduce us into higher levels of engagement and help us develop emotional courage. So they're not really the bad guys, but they don't feel well usually. They're just uncomfortable, maybe a little bit necessary, and then the positive pro-social emotions tend to be those ones that give us joy, meaning really give us a desire to go forward in life. So here's the introduction. I'll just read it. I said, we are hitting the home stretch in this course. We have 2 main projects left in this course: the group presentation project on various emotional classes and your final paper on goals. Because I want you to really focus on creative application and effective interpersonal communication, rather than simply more individual reading and analysis, I am freeing up these weeks, the 12, 13, and really 14, to devote yourself to your projects. Because 14 is when you are offering your group presentations and commenting on them. Okay, there's not a whole lot of other than that. Okay, I'll have a couple questions there. I will not be requiring discussion board or question of the week in either week's. I will just say 13. There is something I probably will do for 14, well, certainly 15. Okay, so it'll probably be 15. I'm going to go ahead and take that out. So I'll just say week 13 there in week 13. Okay, so you're going to be able to use that week to get stuff in. So pay attention to these work templates. They and only they will detail what you need to know and turn in. All other material in the week folders of the class are optional. I pretty much have them up to date through week 13. So if you want to work ahead, you can. They should be accessible to you. But if there's something in there that contradicts this work template, this work template is the king or the queen, as it were. Okay, you go to this. In week 11, you should have discussed steps 1 and 3 in terms of developing a discussion around emotional inventory, where you throw your individual experiences into the group pot to inform a group understanding of your emotional class. You also should have brainstormed about an applied issue around which to help organize your presentation. Those are the 2 main tasks from last week. This week, we're doing the other 3 steps. You should have completed the rest of the preliminary steps. The group presentation assignment, steps number 2, I've already described that. Describe research. Step number 4, connect to real life. Step number 5, conclude and offer strategies. In this week 12, as a group, find and use at least 1 peer-reviewed research article shared about the so-called negative antisocial emotions in your emotional class, and at least 1 article about the so-called positive or pro-social emotions. Literally, that's all I'm making you do, because I'm concentrating on creativity, and we have done so much referencing of academic work. Literally, I just want 1 source of both. And here, I'm even opening it up, even more than normal. For the negative one, I said, I am not going to be strict about your source for the negative emotions, except that it should be a peer-reviewed academic journal. There's a lot of research on negative emotions. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of research on the positive emotions. So I will be even more, right, going here, lenient about the source of the positive emotion. If you find a compelling and current popular article or media source that refers to legitimate research on the topic, i.e. TED Talks, I will accept that. It cannot simply be an inspirational Tony Robbins type video or something of that ilk. There's a lot of great stuff on TED. There's stuff about the positive impact of treating failure well, openness, vulnerability, tons of stuff. Brene Brown has done some work in that, and she's a researcher on the topic, so you can use the TED Talk, follow it back into a research article that person has done. So TED is actually not a bad place to do some of this research and connect it up to what's going on currently. Like I said, there isn't a lot of stuff on positive emotions, so I'm really kind of opening that up. I just want to, as I say, referring to legitimate research, okay? Not just an inspirational video. So please share these articles and your insights, discuss them, and link them up with the other steps I've outlined for the group presentation assignment, okay? Let me stress that the main things I want to demonstrate besides fulfilling the steps and backing your work with some research are 1, creativity, and 2, compassion. In this case, meaning solidarity, mutual advocacy, and enjoyment around the group process. Sharing any challenges you are experiencing. It doesn't all have to be great, okay? Remember, challenges are also part of the process of learning, growing, and improving. And again, week 14 is for the group project submissions, okay? So basically, week 13 is a work week where you assemble the pieces of the individual work and various chosen talents and contribution of the group. Fulfill the roles you have chosen for yourself by discussing the order, time, and edit of the final piece. This is also a week for questions to the instructor to iron out any kinks before submitting the project to week 14. In week 14, the discussion is simply going to be commenting on the videos. And I have a question of the week, question that has to do with simply really looking over this course in very general terms to see what you've learned from it. So that's going to be pretty easy. I mean, week 14 isn't going to be any special preparation or reading, okay? Week 15 is going to be review for the final paper on goals. You should have already done a little bit of work in week 13 and brainstorming around that. We really look in depth about that on the 15th, and it's going to be due on Tuesday of week 16. So as you can see, it's pretty straightforward, and there's not a lot of moving parts in the last few weeks, the last month here, which is good. We're letting the work we've done work for us now. So insights and questions on the discussion board, all right, and respond to at least one fellow student. How do you transform negative self-views and develop capability? The reading had to do with self-views and in particular negative self-views. And so here's what I'm having you do for the discussion. Required. Listen to the entire week 12 intro video. That's this one. Toward the end, I will be talking about transforming negative self-views, both from the standpoint of Reese in chapter 10 and from the standpoint of my own research and my experience in this class. Reese and I have contrasting views, but I'm interested in integrating the views. So we'll do this. The research read, chapter 10, page 274, shows that the negative self-views can at least be partially helped by consistent, positive, supportive social interaction. What have been your experiences with people putting you down and the effect that has on your self-view? What have been your experiences in social settings with self-view in which people consistently raise you up? From your experience in this, is this indicated research affirmed by your experience? Okay, so very basic, simple question. Doesn't require a lot of feedback. You can give a few sentences for each. Here's where it's not as complicated as it looks, okay, because it basically only has 5 questions. But I'm going to ask you to go through the Dr. Seuss cycle for transforming negative self-views. Think about it as mini goal achievement and let me know what you come up with. The first step is this. What is your issue or goal? Simply identify specific personal fear, felt deficiency, or self-put-down that you want to change or overcome. Make sure there's something on the other side of the coin that speaks to your heart. Now, I said heart there, but it should say heart. Speaks to your heart that you care about or that you're motivated to embrace or improve. Examples are, I'm a horrible singer, and on the other side of that is, I want to sing, or I'm passionate about singing. On the negative self-view, it could be, I feel fat, ugly, etc. On the other side, it's, I want to feel beautiful. On the negative side, it could be, I am technologically inept. And on the other side, it's, I want to be proficient enough to make my way around technology. On the negative side, it could be I don't express my feelings right. And on the positive side, it could be I want to be more open and non-judgmental about my feelings. Okay, so here it is. Again, we're kind of dealing with the negative aspect, and we're not just trying to control it or corral it or avoid it or repress it. We're trying to actually move it, use it as a motivation to move into a much more positive, proactive frame of mind. You're getting a theme in this class. That's definitely what we're doing in this class. So again, the effort here is to move things from outer evaluation to inner engagement to inner and outer transformation. For example, moving from ugly, and understanding ugly is simply a characteristic you're born with and you have it or you don't. You know, I'm not 6 foot tall and slender and beautiful in that kind of conventional way, to beautiful being this notion of radiance. Beauty being radiance, beauty being able to take care of yourself, beauty being healthy, things you do have control over, and they tend to be more inner. And then finally, allowing the inner and outer transformation occur where you have a unique confidence and charm that transcends social conventions of pretty. Again, character, quirkiness, kind of your own individuality and style that can be considered beautiful and unique. So that's where we're trying to go with this. Number 2, when do I start? Well, now. You've noticed this. Surprise and interruption works. So interrupt the negative self-views with a hard stop. We did that before. And a rebellious, surprising refusal to accept the negative feeling as definitive, natural, or lasting. Well, I'll always be this. No, you won't. Stop. Interrupt. Throw it out and say, no. Okay? Follow this with a mental or emotional commitment to support the alternative positive passion. It doesn't have to be this way. I won't be this way, and I will try something new and different that I'm passionate about. That's a way to stop it, declare something different, and then move that direction. Here's another thing. This is how I think presently, but not how I can be. Example from class. One student expressed panic over public singing, resulting from criticism, but communicated her personal desire and passion to sing. And I said, go out, karaoke. Go out and express it. I mean, she was able to do it. She felt nervous about it, but was able to do it. And what I'd say in here is continue to do it. Research shows that aversion can only be overcome with like 20 tries. Like if you have food aversion, you have to actually try it about 20 times. And it'll be uncomfortable, and then less uncomfortable, then less uncomfortable, and then your passion starts to come out, and you're starting to have more and more fun. See? And the whole idea is we're kind of taught to make an evaluation immediately, just from one try, okay? We don't give ourselves this latitude to continue to try and continue new things. I want you to do that in this class. If you fail spectacularly in your group presentation, you tried something really either gutsy or just kind of, you just went for it and didn't quite work out, I'll be forgiving, okay? I appreciate the risk. I'm not going to stomp on you. As long as you're putting real effort into it, as long as you're doing positive risk, it doesn't have to look perfect, okay? I can appreciate the effort as well. Performance does matter, but it's not everything, okay? So number 3 here, this is the Zeus cycle. Where did this negative self-view come from? Get at the root with past history and learning into this negative self-view as a doorway into those things inside that create interior barriers to success and fulfillment. You all have had a lot of experience with this in our little experiments throughout this class. So I explain further. Often this comes from family criticism or emotionally traumatic events which program the mind to avoid hoping or trying. The effort here is to become more open and informed in a playful, non-judgmental way. Do you have thoughts about contributing your talent to a group project? Or doubt, sorry, about contributing your talent to a group project? Are you telling yourself you're not academic or not good enough? Alternate, are you a perfectionist too concerned with performance and instructor approval that you're missing out on creativity and experimentation? So you can apply this right to your group process now. If you have any doubt or any self-put down that you're applying to this group process, why not use that? Again, use that, work through this cycle with that, okay? You're getting this assignment done and you're contributing to a better understanding of yourself in a group process. So don't make work hard for yourself. If you can find a doubt or you can find something about it along these lines, use that. So, Investigate the root of this habit, make a conscious decision to loosen up or try something whimsical or not worry about how it is seen. Example, there's a class member who allowed her typographical mistakes to stand without correcting them as an experiment into her emotional reactions. I challenged her to go ahead and just do that because it's going to be out there for everyone to see, and you put it in writing, it seems like it's written in stone, and I'm like, who cares? Put it out there. We could still read it just to give you experience with dealing with those uncomfortable things. Again, you notice that it's effective when you deal with it in a practical way. If you're just doing it with a mental way or just some self-talk or self-imagination, i.e. the New Age and New Thought movements, a lot of times, it's not nearly as effective as actually working through, trying, experimenting, and so forth. Number 4, why do I hold these negative self-views? What do they serve or protect? Many people berate themselves with irrationally holding negative self-views, i.e., I know I always do well in school, in school, but for some reason I keep getting anxious and feel like I'm going to fail when I'm faced with an assignment. So, here we go. What you have to understand is that even negative self-views often protect a person from exposure or vulnerability, from trying hopelessly and getting emotionally hurt again, especially if someone has had disapproval from a parent or a traumatic experience event in childhood. Negative self-views rationalize not trying and therefore not getting hurt, which is a form of ego protection, but they also rationalize not developing something you care about. A really big cost that comes out in underperformance and less joy in life. You have to, as Thich Nhat Hanh suggests, take your negative self-view as a baby in your arms and care for it, so you can open up your heart to move on and try something exciting and different. Example from our class, there was a teacher that humiliated a student for an answer she made, and she was right, and that teacher even had to apologize, but that still left such an impression that this student didn't want to raise her hand again. So that created this traumatic situation, and you ask, why do I hold these negative views? In this case, she's trying to protect herself from being humiliated again. Even though that's not a real threat, the brain has been wired because of the trauma of the emotion and because it was highly charged, to use Ekman's term, that it still stays there until you change it. Literally in experience, you could try to give yourself all kinds of verbal self-affirmations and verbal images or positive mental images, but it's when you actually go out and start engaging. And this person did. This person started to offer herself a little bit more and found out, hey, it's okay. People aren't laughing at me. A lot of times it's just a matter of doing that extra step. And finally, number 5, how do I proactively transform my relationship with my negative self-view into something positive that allows me to test, experiment, surprise, challenge, grow, risk, learn, and be transformed? For the purpose of this question, you can run through this once. But for long-term success, you really have to do this reversal and rebellion against negative self-esteem repeatedly, as I said, at least 20 times, research shows, to get over an aversion. Mentally, emotionally, physically, this involves experimentation with taking the weight off of the serious negative with play, humor, relaxation, flexibility, and curiosity to flip it on its ear. Example, here's some examples from my background. Fear of a foreign culture or person, okay? What will they think of me? Am I going to... Simply asking what they do for fun and listening break the ice. Even in conservative cultures, you can say, well, what do you do for fun? And then it changes the whole culture and you can begin to relate to it. So I've tutored learning disabled students. Instead of rehabilitating them, I get into their way of thinking and help them start a conversation with a math problem where the problem can show you how to solve it. I actually literally have them have a conversation with that problem and say, what's that problem trying to tell you what to do? Again, it's breaking through here it is, fear and isolation and lowering the threshold of judgment so you can be yourself around others and around new situations without having to pretend to know or be successful before you engage. See, I'm hoping this class is doing that for you, okay? And I kind of already gone over the question of the week assignment, so you can simply read that. I really already talked about it up there. Just read through that again. You're doing the 3 steps that I talked about. Go ahead and just go ahead and engage that. You don't have to do a lot. Remember, you only have 10 to 15 minutes on this, okay? So, you're getting caught up in details instead of, like I said, 1 to 2 important insights per group that are applied, or per person in your group that's applied, will easily take up that 10 to 15 minutes. So think in terms of that. 1 to 2 important insights per person. Discussed and applied, bam, you're done. Isn't that easy? Okay, and I said, in terms of turning this in, again, please assemble the document, just label it week 12 summary. How has the group presentation been going? Date it, put your group members' names along there, and this should be the same document for everyone in the group. Okay, one of the contributions of one of the members can type up this, and then share it with each of you individually. Individually post these under your question of the week, okay, for this week. That way I can easily grade them. It'll go right to your grading column. I can do it, even though it's a shared work, by posting them individually, it makes it easier for me to grade, okay? And anyway, and I also put up the updated group presentations and assignment description and my sample again, just in case you needed that, okay? So that's this part. I'm going to go through the readings very briefly, and there'll only be this one video, or this on one video. So stick with me right here as I pause, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, here I get going, being the academic bad boy that I am, going off and criticizing traditional academic research on this issue of reversing negative self views. This is from page 274 of Reese's book, chapter 10. And there's this chart here on this page, box 10, on reversing negative self views, okay? He says something fairly obvious, that people generally prefer positive feedback, kind of duh. People want to hear the truth about themselves too. The first one's called self-enhancement, positive feedback. The second one is basically being real, including being critical about you. Now that doesn't have to be negative, okay? Anything, if you have a really positive regard and desire for performance that helps you understand what you're not doing well or you're doing wrong or you're failing at, if you don't have an adverse attitude toward that, you'd be like, okay, this is great. Knowing this, I'll be able to do it better and get better, okay? This article kind of assumes you'll have this sinking feeling when you get that kind of critical feedback. It doesn't have to be that way. It really depends on your environment, okay? Now, the problem with this is that a lot of you, even those who are doing very well, tend to dismiss positive feedback out of hand, okay? Because you're from, very high expectation environments. Maybe your parents thought that tough love and never really being satisfied with your work was going to help spur your motivation on. Of course, we know that research shows differently on that, okay? So there were 2 ways to reverse negative self-views that this article came up. The first I just thought was just ridiculous, okay? The first one was literally to be so negative, to exaggerate the negative to such a degree that you would be like dismissing the negative self-view. Literally, it would be like, okay, if you say that, oh, I'm not so smart, you say, oh yeah, you're super dumb, man. You don't know anything. 1 + 1, get out of here. It's like by overemphasizing this sort of negative and kind of caricaturing it or cartooning or exaggerating to some extent, it would lose its validity, okay? It would, like I said, it would surprise you out of your moderate negativity. I just think that, again, this is the whole idea of negating the negative. It doesn't make sense, okay? You're negative, you get even more negative, but there's no real positive alternative here. And so it may, again, control it, you laugh it off, or you think, okay, maybe I'm being a little silly, but you don't actually have something to replace it. If you don't have something to replace it, it'll come back, okay? And that's what I don't like about that one. Now, of course, the second one is a little bit obvious too. It says the second strategy for self-concept change is to gain the support of key interaction partners as friends, relatives, and coworkers. Duh. Okay, and they said if you can kind of assemble them and have them give person consistent feedback that's positive or uplifting for that person, fine. But I know a lot of people who just won't accept it, especially from the people close to them, because their internal language is so strong. And this is, as I say down here, too external to interrupt abuse or a negative pattern, okay? And it, again, doesn't establish the actual positive, practical replacement of those negative feelings, okay? And here's another thing I want to say for my own self-esteem research. If you are going to give feedback to somebody, it needs to be specific and applied, real, not general and just kind of out there. You're a really nice person. Okay, that doesn't have a lot of power, right? Can't you see how talented you are? No, that's why I have this negative self-view. I may be talented, but I'm still like, I've got negative view. Okay, so here's what you would do instead, and here's what I do when I'm trying to interact with you. I say something like, you have a real gift with lifting up other people. See, that's more specific. And then I'll go on to talk about it. I'll do specifically what I see in their writing or in their demeanor that really lifts other people. I'll give them evidence that the person that they uplifted talked to me and said, this person is amazing, and this is what she did for me or he did for me. You know, and here's another one too, how it personally affects you. Instead of just saying, oh, can't you see how talented you are? You're a good singer. I would say, your singing inspires me. Okay? It's affected me. Can't you see? Already you're having a good effect on me. You're picking me up. Okay? So that kind of specificity, power, seeing that they're actually moving and motivating others is what helps a person give reality to the positive aspect and allow the self-doubt to begin to fade. Okay? In this, okay, we're not convincing them that they're good. We are working with them and helping them work on their weaknesses to specifically see their successes. Okay? This really worked with tutoring learning disabled students. So that's my critique, and that's also my comeback with this particular with my own suggestion. Now, I've already gone over with you this thing up in the assignments. I've already written it out. But if you want to see if you want to see how I think, this is how I think. Okay, I'm like, wait a minute, there's a kind of a cycle here. Okay, identify. I'm like, what? Okay, is my issue, is my goal? And I'm just like, okay. And I'm like, interrupt. Okay, that's always been working. So I just throw interrupt down on the page. Okay, then I'm like, okay, here's some examples, right? The put down and examples from the class. So that's coming in, all right? And I'm like, hey, this is kind of like a what, when, where? And there's a why and a how here. I'm like, woo, that's kind of cool too. Start throwing that come in. And I said, where did this come from? I said, okay, get at the root. Learn into the negative self-view, right? Talented contributed to the group project. Find some way to tie it into the group project if you can. And why do I hold this view? And again, these other examples start jumping out at me. So I put them down here in these brackets. Okay, and then finding how. How do I proactively address it? Test, experiment, surprise, and so forth. Again, the notion that you have to do it repeatedly, not just as a one-off. This is how I think. I just think it'll give you a little bit of insight into that. Of course, the worked out, fine edged piece is above, up here. Whoops, I can't do it right now because I have it on the other document. But at least maybe that gives you a little bit of humor. This is exactly who we are as human beings. This chart here, okay? Once we have time to reflect upon it, make it more systematic, offer it to other people, then what you get is this other document here, right? Okay? See that messy thing? Now let's go over to this, okay? Here, I'll just bring it to the side here, okay? Now let's bring it over to this, right? Look at that. Looks like I'm a genius. When you look at this, I'm like, oh, that guy's smart. He's got it all set out. The Dr. Seuss cycle, it's really nicely formatted. Got the examples all where they're supposed to go. All right? And yet, how did that start? How did the creative process start there? Getting some ideas down on paper right like this, okay? So here's what I want, and here's my challenge to you. Don't judge yourselves. By allowing yourself to get on a piece of paper, freely just draw, put down a few initial insights, and allow those insights to come earlier on instead of waiting for the last moment. If you do it at the last moment, there's no time for this process to happen. Then you will allow yourself to really be able to engage. And what I've noticed, and this is great for all your classes, is that a lot of the heavy lifting is already being done in your brain in the background. Insight will come when you're in a shower, when you're walking. You're like, definitely keep your iPhone with you, hit that microphone button, and put that insight into your notes, okay? Or keep a little pad of paper with you. Write it down real quick. And before you know it, half your work is being done by your brain or jumping out in a conversation with another person. That's the best way to do it. And that's what I'm hoping you're doing in these group presentations. Allow the zinging back and forth just to go, oh, wait a minute, that makes me think of this. Oh, great idea. Let's put that in there. And remember, only 1 or 2 really important applied insights per person are needed in this assignment, and you've got 10 or 15 minutes done. Make it, like I said, the greatest hits, okay? And allow your brain to come up with the greatest hits, okay? By simply just starting early, being more playful, and then recognizing when a great idea jumps out. Instead of, oh yeah, that's a great idea, and then letting it fade, use your iPhone, use a pad of paper, write it down, put it someplace where you're not going to lose it, and then make it central to your group process or your individual process, and then share it with other people. Okay? It doesn't have to be that difficult. We put so much pressure on ourselves, then we forget all the positive things that we're doing, and and then we just try to contrive something later that's not nearly as good. So my advice to you, and especially for this group presentation, is I'm going to reward you doing these kinds of things. Insight, develop an understanding and approach of it. Try some positive risk. If it went flat, just explain why it went flat, okay? And I'll be, all right, this person is understand, they're demonstrating, they know what's happening, some of the hazards of experimentation. That's just as good for me, because I'm really looking at your self-understanding and your progress and your efforts and your contributions. I'm not a perfectionist. I'm not looking for some golden product like I had at the very end. If you start with that little, little paper with all the charts and squiggly writing everywhere, that's fine. Do your best to make a nice, simple, proficient, nicely viewable presentation. But again, when it comes to the thought process, allow yourself to have some flexibility and creativity. So I hope that's some inducement and encouragement to you. I hope this class is showing you that you actually can be open. You can actually take risks even in an academic environment and be supported. Okay, so go out there, let me know how it's going, and have some fun. Until next week, Dr. Zeus signing out. Bye.